that we see two major unions saying that Labor needs to tone down their anti-coal and gas rhetoric because they're losing blue-collar voters. They're right, aren't they?
Yeah, good morning, Laura. It's definitely a difficult issue for Labor, and let's be frank, climate change, for some reason, is a really difficult issue in Australia for us to get that bipartisan landing point. And yeah, Labor's taken some tough policies in the last few elections and haven't got a mandate for it, so they need to go back to the drawing board. I think there's some pleasing signs, though, in terms of the language when it comes to gas and the caution when it comes to Labor now outlining a mid-term target and waiting till the conference next year before doing that. I think they're good signs, and I think it's a really good thing that there's left and right-wing unions talking to Labor Party members about how to bring that climate change policy more into the centre. I think that's only a good thing when it comes to Labor rebuilding its political stocks and engaging with those regional communities.
Coronavirus in 2020, well, it's hard to get any other issues getting equal airtime, but there's certainly not been the discussion about climate change this year as there has done in previous years. What does this tell you? Is climate change just a good times issue, if you like, or is it something that is now ingrained in our politics and is going to be divisive ever more?
Yeah, look, it's one of those things, Laura, isn't it? We look at the United States from Australia from afar and we go, why do they choose to make such a partisan issue over things like gun control and healthcare? I mean, why is it such a rancorous political debate around that? In Australia, of all the issues, we choose climate change. And we see, look, Boris Johnson, I mean, there's effectively a bipartisan consensus in the United Kingdom when it comes to how to deal with climate change and the basics. But in Australia, and look, it started with the CPRS. We remember, Laura, when Rudd was in and the debate with Turnbull and the Liberal Party, tore apart the Liberal Party, has torn their leadership apart a number of times. It's been a difficult issue for Labor to land, obviously, since then as well, after the carbon tax too. So, look, I think, unfortunately, when it comes to the prognosis for the next few years, it's going to continue to be a partisan issue. I do sort of see some signs that some of the politics might be coming out, though, with where the coalition's policy at the moment is probably less of an issue or a concern for Labor. So it's because it's really about, you know, the taxpayer coming in and forking out when it comes to these pathways and blueprints now. So, look, Labor also learning the lessons too, really important. But, yeah, unfortunately, for the next few years, all I can see is some more partisan squabbles in this space.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to end. It's been 20 years now, so it's probably just going to be 30 when it comes to Australian politics. As I said, the coronavirus really dominating at this year. It makes it quite difficult for an opposition in times of financial crisis. People often look to the incumbent for stability. The polls are really bearing that out, aren't they? And you see Labor, I think, try in question time to hone in on the fringe issues around what the government is trying to deal with. And I don't say fringe issues as in they're not as important, but really trying to hammer this need for a federal ICAC.
Yeah, exactly right. I think oppositions at this time need to sort of pick up their line of length and as you say, just hammer it. That's what's going on with the federal ICAC. It's also been the case with childcare and aged care as well. Labor's picked its issues up where it sees a gap and a vulnerability. Yep. And that's basically all oppositions can do at this time, Laura. And like we look at it, there's an incumbency, advantage of incumbency at the moment. We've seen it in recent elections in the Northern Territory, ACT and even New Zealand. We're probably going to see it again on Queensland on Saturday. People are looking towards governments in their handling of COVID and it's been so far so good. That's hard for oppositions to get into that frame then.
Yeah, it certainly is. Just quickly before I let you go, there's an issue around Victoria. I think it's been really interesting, the divided kind of view of all of this. But those that have this blinkered view of Daniel Andrews and then criticise the likes of Josh Frydenberg for having an impassioned view about Victoria, I mean, it's a bit wild at times, isn't it? Josh Frydenberg is living this as a local member, as a Victorian, and then he was criticised for giving an impassioned speech in question time. I mean, the world's gone a bit mad, hasn't it?
Yeah, I think the lockdown in Melbourne's driven everybody a little bit bonkers. And look, you know, fair enough, the passion's there. It's a passionate debate and discussion. And I suppose fair enough, because let's be frank, there's been lives at stake. We've seen tragically a lot of lives lost in Victoria. There's been a need for a strong response from the government there, and we've seen that. It's also spilt over, unfortunately, to that federal-state divide, and that's been a little bit ugly at times and not necessarily great. I suppose some Victorians have seen that as a bit unseemly and not pulling for Victoria. Victoria. Look, hopefully we can get beyond it now, right? Because now that the economic task and the task of getting Australians back into work is going to be for all state governments and the federal government together. It's a big challenge, and we saw some really concerning numbers this week from Senate estimates, Laura, about the expectation from social services is that there's going to be more people on Job Seeker in 2024 than there was going into COVID. So I think that's really, that tells a really concerning story. That's what we all need to be focusing on from here on.
It certainly does, is concerning, and it won't be $40 a day. We know that, but we don't know how much.